I saw your phone.
Probably just a meeting reminder.
Friday, Arya, 8 p.m. Will she like a private table?
Well, it's just work, Ashley.
If someone ever asked me, what can make a 17-year marriage fall apart in a single second? I wouldn't even hesitate. One ping. One tiny, quiet notification that echoed in my chest like a nuclear bomb. I, Ashley Collins, finance professor at UCLA, 43 years old, used to believe that marriage to Ryan Collins was the definition of grown-up love. No drama, no petty fights. We had a 2-story house in Pasadena, 2 British short-hair cats, a perfectly trimmed rose garden, and a Saturday grocery routine as steady as a heartbeat. Everyone thought we were couple goals. Honestly, so did I, until that Monday night. Ryan was in the shower. I was folding laundry in the bedroom. The familiar ping from his iPhone echoed from the nightstand. The screen lit up in the dark with a preview. Reservation confirmed. Aria Friday, 8 p.m. She'll love the private booth. I let out a soft laugh. Could have been a client. Could have been a corporate dinner. Could have been anything. Except what I didn't want to think. But you know that feeling, right? Like a sixth sense suddenly kicking in. Like an instinct your brain tries to dismiss, but your heart whispers, something's wrong. I'm not the type to check my husband's phone. I'm the fair game kind of woman. The type who believes privacy is the bedrock of a healthy relationship. But that night, my hands weren't mine anymore. Like they were hijacked. I picked up the phone and typed in the passcode. Our wedding date. Ironic, right? What I found wasn't just a dinner text. It was a whole Netflix season of secrets, messages, mirror selfies, breakfast meetups in Santa Monica, plane tickets to Portland with a companion name, Sophie Adams, the new PR hire at Ryan's firm. Young, beautiful, and of course single. I don't remember how long I sat on the edge of the bed, phone still in hand, my fingers cold as steel. Every message felt like a knife, but the cruelest part wasn't what I saw. It was how they said it. So casual, so guiltless. They texted like lovers planning a Valentine's getaway, not 2 people dismantling sacred vows. When Ryan stepped out of the shower, hair still damp, he spoke like it was any normal night. Have you seen my navy tie, the one I wear with the gray suit? I set the phone back where it was. Second drawer, I said, surprised at how steady my voice sounded. Like concrete. Inside, I was crumbling into dust. That night, I lay beside him, this man I once chose to spend my life with, and realized I didn't know who he was anymore. I listened to each breath he took, each turn in the sheets, and asked myself, when did he start hiding? When did I start looking away? Most people, when they discover betrayal, scream, throw plates, storm out. I didn't. I wasn't going to be that drama queen people gossip about on Twitter. I wanted control. I wanted the truth, full, raw, undeniable. And I wanted justice, not the kind served with tears, but with the cold logic of a woman who's been pushed too far. The next morning, I kissed Ryan on the cheek like always. Good luck with your pitch today, I said, fully aware that pitch didn't exist. After he pulled out of the garage, I turned back, shut the door, locked it 3 times, and pressed my forehead against the cold wood. The game was on. I didn't know if I'd end up divorced, forgiving, or setting the world on fire. But I knew one thing. The innocence died last night, and Ashley Collins had just woken up. Not to break down, but to act. I always thought I was just an ordinary woman, not the mastermind type or someone with a detective streak. But that morning, after sending Ryan off to work with a fake smile and a good luck with the strategy meeting, I realized inside every betrayed woman lies a survival instinct waiting to be awakened. And that instinct, when cornered, doesn't choose to scream, it chooses precision. I made an espresso, sat down at the kitchen table, opened my laptop, and typed the first words. Sophie Adams, Creative Director, BrandWorks Los Angeles. Social media is the devil's tool, but it's also the light that guides truth. In less than an hour, I had Sophie's LinkedIn profile, her Instagram post flaunting plane tickets to Portland with someone special, and a picture of a champagne glass with Ryan's ringed finger peeking from the corner. Subtle? Maybe. But to me, it was a silent confession. Next came the second step, checking Ryan's calendar via iCloud. He'd once shared it with me so I could keep track of his packed meetings. Back then, I thought it was a pro and thoughtful move. Now, extremely convenient for exposing secrets. Friday, 8 p.m. Aria. Reservation for two. Private booth. No meeting, no business partner. Just a date night disguised under a business suit. And I, the woman who had split mortgage payments, co-managed financial decisions, and supported him through his MBA, was now sitting there, typing an email invitation to the husband of his mistress. That was when I knew I had crossed a new line. I was no longer simply the victim. I was planning, not for cheap revenge, but to create a space where the truth couldn't hide. And that space was Aria, the restaurant Ryan thought would be the perfect setting for a quiet, romantic evening without interruptions. I called the restaurant, spoke with the reservations manager. My tone was gentle, calm, professional. Hello, I'm a professor at UCLA, organizing a dinner with a corporate guest. I'd like to request a table near the private booth already booked under the name Ryan Collins. Would it be possible to be seated next to it? The manager didn't suspect a thing. Certainly, Ms. Collins. We'll arrange it right away. Ms. Collins. The way they used that name, still tied to a man who no longer deserved it, made me both shiver and feel oddly powerful. Next came the most crucial step, contacting Liam Carter, the CEO of an architectural firm based in Santa Monica, whom I discovered to be Sophie's husband. Once again, my position as a professor saved me from suspicion. I wrote a formal email introducing UCLA's business speaker series and invited him to share insights on urban space design thinking. Meeting location, Aria, Friday evening. In less than 3 hours, Liam replied. His schedule was open and he was delighted by the invitation to share his perspective. My email inbox no longer represented academia. It was now a chessboard, and I had just placed the knights. Thursday afternoon, I cleaned out my closet and pulled out the plum red heels, the pair Ryan once said were too loud for a meeting. I smiled. Exactly. They weren't made for meetings. They were made for war. That evening, Ryan said, I'll be late tomorrow, might be all night. Meeting with Japanese clients. Jet lag means they only work after 8. I nodded, pouring him more wine, eyes steady. Well, I'll be out too. I've got an important appointment. Ryan didn't ask further. He believed I was still the gentle wife, always waiting at home. He didn't know that in my silence, I was rewriting the script of my entire life. And in the scene to come, I was no longer the supporting role. I was holding the mic. Friday, the day Ryan looked forward to a romantic evening with his mistress, became the day I transformed into the most composed and sharp version of myself. I didn't walk into Aria with a broken heart or tear-stained eyes. I arrived with calm intent, distilled from 3 sleepless nights and hours of preparation, as if stepping into a courtroom where truth would be revealed without the need for a judge. A navy midi dress hugged my frame, and plum red stilettos clicked against the marble floor like a prelude to war. My hair was softly curled, makeup just enough, not to look forced, but not vulnerable either. The host recognized me instantly, the woman who had requested a seat near a private booth on Wednesday. He gave a slight nod, the kind of courtesy only fine dining restaurants in Beverly Hills could deliver, and led me to the table with the ideal view, just as promised. I sat down, ordered a dry martini, my eyes fixed on the grand glass door reflecting the streetlights. But my ears waited for one sound. The door opening and Ryan's name called from the reservation list. It didn't take long. The sound arrived. Ryan entered, looking every bit the Instagram husband women post about. Navy suit, pearl white shirt, an expensive watch, and a smile that could make people forget ethics. He had no idea that every gesture he made was being observed by the woman he once called home. 10 minutes later, Sophie walked in. Just as I'd seen her on Instagram, young, slim, dressed in a red gown that screamed forbidden fruit in Eden. They embraced, a kind of secretive intimacy they assumed was safe under candlelight. Ryan poured wine, whispered something that made Sophie tilt her head onto his shoulder in laughter. If this were a TV drama, the scene would play in slow motion, romantic music swelling, and viewers would ship the couple. But this was real life. And in real life, there's no happy ending for the unfaithful. Sorry to keep you waiting. I turned in surprise. Liam Carter had arrived. He wore a gray shirt and blazer, the calm demeanor of a man who's weathered his share of business storms. We shook hands, exchanged polite pleasantries, and were then guided to our table, right next to the booth where Ryan and Sophie were still lost in their fantasy. Throughout the appetizers, I worked hard to maintain a professional facade, asking Liam about his company and the sustainable urban development projects he was pursuing. But every part of me was clenching, resisting the urge to laugh, to cry, to rise and expose everything. I saw Ryan lean in to whisper in Sophie's ear, saw his hand rest on her thigh, all under soft golden light, like it was an innocent love story. They didn't know the curtain had already fallen. Just as I was explaining my research on the integration of finance and spatial planning, Sophie stood up. She said something softly to Ryan and headed toward the restroom. Instinctively, I excused myself from Liam, rose, not in haste, but with purpose, and walked toward the restroom hallway. We met at the turn. Sophie froze when she saw me. Her eyes instantly shifted from confused to panicked, like a child who had just shattered a priceless vase in a museum. "You're Ryan's wife?" I gave a slight nod, eyes locked on hers. "And the man over there," I gestured back toward our table, "is your husband." No shouting, no slapping, just a silence that made it hard to breathe. "Please don't make a scene," Sophie whispered, her eyes darting like she feared someone familiar might see. "Why not?" I tilted my head, half smiling. "You weren't shy sitting next to someone else's husband in public. Why be shy about facing it?" Right then, I saw Ryan realize something was off. He turned, and our eyes met. In that split second, I watched panic sweep over his face, as if waking from a sweet dream only to find himself at the edge of a cliff. I didn't run to him, didn't call his name. I just stood there, silently, so he could understand everything had crumbled. And when Liam appeared, eyebrows furrowed at the scene unfolding, I turned, took a steady breath, and said, "Liam, I think we need a four-person conversation, not to humiliate anyone, but to end the fantasy with the truth." In a restaurant where the clinking of spoons and wine glasses is usually just background to sweet declarations of love, that night, the silence among four people rang louder than a symphony. We sat in a private dining room, frosted glass walls, crystal chandelier lights gently hanging as if sheltering a romantic dinner. But instead of confessions of love, what hovered over that table was a thick atmosphere, the truth freshly revealed, raw and undeniable. Liam and I sat on one side, Ryan and Sophie across from us. We split exactly according to the truth. Who belonged to whom? Who had betrayed whom? Ryan was the first to speak. His voice was hoarse, like he had just swallowed a stone. "Ashley, this isn't what you think." I laughed. Not loud, not angry, just a small laugh, almost kind. "Then go ahead, Ryan. Try telling me your version." He glanced around awkwardly, but there was no escape in this 20-square-meter room. Sophie kept her head down, hands clasped tightly in her lap like a child bracing for punishment. Liam was the second to speak. He looked straight at his wife, not furious, not yelling, just eyes filled with heartbreak. "How long?" Sophie didn't answer. Her silence was the answer. And that's what hurts most, when you realize you've been written out of someone's life without even a goodbye. Ryan turned to me, trying to reach for the man I had once respected for 17 years. I was going to end it, I swear. I don't know how it got this far. I cut him off. "You know exactly how. You booked the restaurant, you planned it, you texted, 'She'll love the private booth.' And she wasn't your wife." No one argued, because no one can argue against a truth prepared with logic cold as steel and a mind sharpened by the most painful night of my life. Sophie finally spoke, for the first time that evening. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone. It all started, without any plan." I looked at her, eyes no longer filled with bitterness. In truth, I didn't need to hate Sophie anymore. The deepest disappointment wasn't in her, a stranger who had wandered into forbidden ground, but in Ryan, who knew exactly what he was destroying. "I understand," I said, voice light as wind but each word a blade. "These things, they never start with a plan, but they always come with choices, and both of you chose to continue, day after day, night after night, instead of stopping to speak the truth. No one touched their water. No one opened the menu. Hunger was no longer a survival instinct. Brokenness had taken its place. So, what are you going to do? Ryan asked, nearly desperate. I looked at him, calm. I booked a hotel across the street this afternoon. I'll be staying there tonight. When I come home on Sunday, I don't want to see you there anymore. Liam simply nodded. I knew, like me, he didn't need to announce a breakup right here. But a man staring into the eyes of betrayal already knows the answer. Sophie gently reached for his hand. Liam pulled away. A wordless act, but one that echoed like a sentence. I stood, picked up my purse. I think dinner's over. Full on lies, full on unspoken truths. Ryan shot up. Ashley, wait. I love you. You're my family. I paused for a second, then turned, looked at him one last time in that setting. Family isn't a place you sneak out of every weekend. I left the room, red heels still tapping steadily. Not fast, not slow. Each step like pulling needles out of my chest, little by little, painful but necessary. I didn't cry, didn't feel triumphant. Only one thing remained in that moment. I had chosen right, chosen truth, chosen dignity, and chosen the end. I walked out of Aria like someone leaving a battlefield. No bombs, no bullets, no blood. But inside me were thousands of shards invisible to the eye. Shards of 17 years, of every moment of trust, every instance of forgiveness, not realizing I was slowly erasing my own boundaries for someone unworthy. The Beverly Hills night breeze brushed my hair as I crossed the street, my high heels tapping rhythmically on the stone-paved sidewalk. Across from Aria stood the Grand Marlowe Hotel, where I had booked a room 3 days earlier, like someone preparing to leave their own home without knowing if they'd ever return. The front desk recognized me. They didn't ask much, just handed me the key with a polite, slightly understanding look. I stepped into the elevator, one hand holding my purse, the other keeping my back straight. I couldn't collapse. I couldn't break. Not yet. The 10th floor room opened to a large window facing the city. The yellow, red, and green lights of Los Angeles at night didn't flicker like fireworks. They burned steadily, like the feeling simmering inside me. It wasn't rage anymore, nor pain, just emptiness. I took off my shoes, unzipped the back of my dress, and let the navy fabric fall onto the chair. My body exhausted, like a soldier returning after shedding her armor. And then I cried. Not the loud, uncontrollable kind, but the kind that's silent, each sob caught in the throat. My body curled up, back against the edge of the bed, arms wrapped around my knees like I was trying to hold myself together. I didn't cry just for the dead marriage, but for the woman I used to be, the one who believed love could endure anything. I don't know how long I sat like that. Only when the knocking at the door sounded did I slowly get up. I checked the peephole. It was Liam. I opened the door. He stood there, saying nothing, just looking at me with a very real gaze. Not pitying, not curious, but like a mirror reflecting exactly what I was. Broken, but not defeated. Sorry to bother you. His voice was hoarse. I didn't know where else to go. I just couldn't go home tonight. I opened the door wider, asking nothing more. No need for explanations. No barriers. We both understood. Tonight, the only thing strong enough to hold two betrayed souls together was the presence of someone who wouldn't judge. We sat by the window in two chairs facing each other. I wore a hotel robe, my hair falling messily down my back. Liam still wore his suit, tie off, rubbing his forehead as if trying to erase memories. Between us was a tray of mint tea and two steaming cups delivered moments earlier by room service. No wine, no cigarettes, just two people relearning how to breathe. Did you suspect anything? I asked. Liam was silent for a few seconds. Yeah, but I didn't want to believe it. Sophie got busy, distant. I told myself she was just stressed from a new project. Every time I thought about asking her directly, I felt like a coward. I nodded. Same. Ryan clearly changed, but I kept telling myself everyone goes through phases. I used to think keeping the family stable was more important than the unease inside me. He looked at me, and then we become the best liars to ourselves. Silence. Then we both laughed, not with joy, but with the bitter realization that we had learned too late. Trust also needs protection, not to be handed out like a blank contract. I don't know when we stopped looking at the city and started looking at each other. Not the gaze of lonely people searching for comfort, but the gaze of survivors from the same shipwreck. No one needed to say, "I understand." We already did. Liam left the room just before 1 a.m. No goodbye kiss, no hurried hug. Just one sentence before he stepped out the door. "Thank you for not letting me be alone in this pain." I nodded. "We'll get through it. Not now, but eventually." The door closed. I looked at the room key he left on the table. Not as an invitation, but as a promise. If needed, I'm here. Not for love, but for kindness. I woke up in the hotel room with the curtains not fully drawn, morning sunlight slipping through the window slit and stretching across the wooden floor like a gentle reminder. A new day had begun, even if the heart hadn't quite caught up. My head felt heavy, not from alcohol, but from the emotional aftershocks of a long night. I no longer felt like the betrayed woman. Instead, it was a strange state, a clarity so sharp it was almost cold, like suddenly realizing you've been standing inside a house that's been on fire for a long time, but you were too busy watering the plant in the kitchen to notice the black smoke covering the roof. The room phone rang. The front desk informed me there was a man waiting for me in the lobby. His name? Ryan Collins. I hung up without replying, but then I stood up, put on a beige coat, tied my hair neatly, and went down. Not because I wanted to see him again, but because I needed to end this, clearly, with no ambiguity. Ryan sat in the waiting area, hands clasped, the uneasy posture of someone who had just lost himself. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes sunken. He was no longer the confident man from last night, no longer the CEO from press conferences. In front of me was a husband who once meant everything, now turned into a stranger asking for a chance. "Why are you here?" I asked, my voice neither loud nor soft, just the exact weight it needed. He stood up, took a step closer, but froze when he saw I didn't move. "Ashley, please, don't leave me." I ended it with her. "Last night, I was wrong. But the love I have for you is real. It's always been real." I looked him straight in the eyes. "Real love doesn't need to detour through someone else's bed, Ryan." He looked down, hands hanging limply. I didn't know what I was thinking. Sometimes you seem so strong, so perfect. I felt unnecessary in my own life. I gave a slight laugh. "And instead of telling me that, you chose a younger woman to feel valuable?" He shook his head. "It's not like that. It's my fault, my weakness, my stupidity. But you can't throw away 17 years over one mistake." I crossed my arms, holding steady the clash of pain and pride in my chest. "This isn't one mistake, Ryan. It's a chain of choices that went on for almost a year. Every time you texted in the bathroom, every night you lied about business trips, every indifferent glance when I asked if you'd eaten, every little thing, adding up to a sin that can't be washed away with tears." He trembled. "I'll do anything to make it right. I swear. I'll go to therapy, change all my passwords, be completely open. Just please give me a chance." I looked down at the wedding ring on my hand. A small piece of metal that once was a promise, now just a hollow symbol. I took it off and placed it in his hand. "The only chance you have is to become a decent human being. For yourself. Not for me, I'm done." He stood there, stunned. "That's it?" I nodded. "That's it, not because I'm weak, but because I'm strong enough to know what's dead shouldn't be forced back to life." He dropped his head. I walked past him, without looking back. Each step across the hotel lobby was like a farewell to the woman I used to be, the one who waited, who believed, who cried. She had lived long enough. Now I was allowed to move on, with a lighter heart. That evening I returned home. No more Ryan. No more shadows of a stranger in the familiar space I once called ours. I made a cup of tea, opened the window to let the wind sweep through the living room, as if replacing the stale air that had lingered far too long. My phone rang. It was Liam. "I'm not calling to ask if you're okay," he said, "because I know you're not. I just wanted to say, you're not alone." I smiled softly. "Thank you. I know." There's something people rarely say about getting over betrayal. You won't be okay the next day. And you won't wake up with a brand new heart either. No, recovery doesn't arrive on a sunny morning with soft music and fragrant coffee. It comes through the days no one sees. When you choose to stay, to move forward, even when there's no applause or rose petals at your feet. I returned to work at UCLA 2 weeks later. The students still came to class, still asked questions, still reminded me of deadlines. No one knew that Professor Collins had taken off her wedding ring, had lost a piece of what used to be her whole world. I started making time for things I used to postpone, signed up for a Saturday morning yoga class, learned to cook spicy Thai food, the kind Ryan didn't like, and reread the half-finished novel I had left in my desk drawer for 3 years. Not every day was strong. Some evenings, I sat alone in the living room, hand unconsciously scrolling through old playlists, where John Mayer's voice used to be the background for lazy dinners, the two of us eating pizza and talking about life. But I didn't turn the music off, didn't cry either. I let the memories come, then go, like the wind brushing through curtains, touching, then letting go. Liam kept in touch. We didn't rush to become something grand. We were just two people once broken, learning how to walk again on new legs. Lunchtime coffee dates, sometimes short calls during breaks. Not sentimental, not forced. We shared about work, books, about how Sophie moved out of the city after the divorce papers were signed, about how Ryan still sent emails asking to talk one more time, which I never replied to. One Sunday afternoon, Liam and I walked along Venice Beach. The golden sun was soft, the ocean breeze smelled like salt, and children's laughter echoed from a park nearby. I told him about the book project I had been thinking of for a long time. Behavioral finance in emotional decisions. Sounded academic, but really it was a coded reflection of what I had been through. He smiled, asking, "Do you think you'll fall in love again?" I didn't answer right away. My eyes followed a drifting cloud in the distance. Love isn't like a door you open and shut. It's more like light. Sometimes it dims. Sometimes it flares up from a place you least expect. He didn't ask further. We kept walking, leaving behind temporary footprints in the sand, like traces of memory. They'll fade, but they existed. A year after that fateful night at Aria, I ran into Ryan at a colleague's farewell party. He looked visibly older, the familiar arrogance gone. When he saw me, he nodded. I responded with a polite smile, then turned to chat with someone else. No bitterness, no regret. Because when a chapter ends, what you need to do isn't reread it, but write on. That night, Liam and I walked home under the streetlights. He held my hand, not tight, not pulling, just quietly beside me, in sync with my steps. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. I looked up, the yellow light reflecting in my eyes. "I'm thinking, sometimes we have to lose everything to know what we really need. I used to think my life ended in that hotel room back then. But it turns out it was just the beginning." He said nothing, just gently squeezed my hand, a silent promise without words. And I understood. Happiness doesn't mean never being broken. It means that after you've shattered, you choose which pieces to keep, which pieces to shape into the person you'll be tomorrow. I choose myself. I choose truth. And this time, I choose love that doesn't have to hide, doesn't have to apologize,